Good day to you, partner. I'm Eve, and I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
Hey guys, Wheat Solo here, aka your Skeleton King. Season 3 is on the way. Closed beta has been out for 3 days now, I believe. I'm not keeping track of time well. It's all going into making content for you leeches. Anyways, I've been a little irritated because I've been having really bad luck making the gear I need to make the builds I want to showcase, because I do like making this content. I'm not trying to support myself off of YouTube, but I'm really irritated at how long it's taken me to make certain items. For instance, I slammed 150 arachnid meshes that were 18 plus faster cast rate, and I didn't hit 10 FCR once. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I've been having bad luck on rings. Amis went well, so I guess, you know, it is what it is. So what are the 5 hot beta tips from this video if you want to watch for 2 minutes and then turn it off because you don't like me very much, which, you know, reminds me of my ex. Don't make either of the builds in this video. I'm sorry. So, I don't know, I think I started off with this build because I got tired trying to make gear, and so I just threw together some random crap on a character and made the confused Iron Maiden, Iron Golem amp damage build. It's so bad that 1 point clay golems with 19 soft points out DPS my Iron Maiden confuse amp damage. The other build on screen is a BIS setup of the new Skeletal Mage build. We'll break it down later, and it's dog shit. These are both dog shit builds. I'm not sure which is worse, because one of these is incredibly cheap and one of these is incredibly expensive. Second hot tip: revives still suck. I've already seen people in multiple places talking about how good revives are again. Like, it happens just constantly. They're still awful. Poison is still the best Necromancer. It's been nerfed twice in beta, and as of now, it should still be the best mapping spec. That content will be coming. I probably will make a poison video myself. Again, the numbers aren't done, so all of this should be taken with a grain of salt. But even after 2 nerfs, Poison should still be the best map clearing necro. CE should be the second best mapping necro easily. But there are issues with it in beta. There are people who are already calling it S tier. I don't know why, because I wouldn't call it S tier even if it didn't have some issues. But, you know, some people like to just make a video and say everything is S tier. If it didn't have issues, it would at least be A+ tier. How can it be S tier? I don't know, because it's gonna be like 9-minute River of Blood, 8-minute River of Blood. Poison can do 6-minute River of Blood. Amazons can do 7-minute River of Blood. It's not an S tier build. It should be an A+ A tier build, but we'll get to that video later, and hopefully its issues are resolved. Summons, or I guess I should say Scelemancer, got buffs. Golems received no buffs, unless you count Pierce, because now you can drop resistances below 0. But remember, summons and traps gain half efficiency, and if you drop an enemy below 0, it's halved. So it would be a quarter for your summons. But technically, that's a buff to fire golems. But besides that, golems received no buffs. Basically, when the season goes live, if you find a Larix early on in the season, at 30 skill points, your skeletons are doing about as much damage as clay golems. Now, clay golems that have max amp damage, so they might still clear a bit faster, but you'll notice when you're doing content early on, having 20 minions is going to be really nice, and we'll get to why you'd have 20 minions, because they kind of fan out. So if you can get a Larix early on, I would never even go clay golems anymore. They're still going to be very useful for, you know, just someone who's naked and lazy, or group support, right? You just go 20-point golem mastery and go into curses. So let's talk about these two awful, awful builds for a while. The first build, the one I made, it came around because they made changes to Thorns and how attacker takes damage works. It's supposed to be applied to Iron Maiden. I think it's not, and I don't even care to test it. I mean, maybe I will at some point, but basically, now enemies should take damage whether they miss or hit, because in the old days they had to actually hit you to take damage, which means if they miss, basically Thorns was just always a poorly designed idea, because you don't want to get hit, but then you have to get hit, so then you have to make a tanky character, and then there's the whole issue of monster life scaling. This gets around one of those problems, that if they miss, they still take damage. Also, ranged enemies take damage when they hit or miss. Whether it's working or not, it's doing nothing. The other change is Confuse now increases attack speed by a shit ton. So the idea is, like, you can just look at these enemies. They are smashing and they are smoothing. So the idea is you cast Confuse, you cast Iron Maiden, and the enemies just destroy themselves. But it's... they aren't at all. In fact, I think by this point, yes, I changed the clay golems. My naked 1 point or my 20-point clay golems with my plus skills and my gear are doing more damage than Iron Maiden and Confuse with all of my skill points invested into it. And of course I have Amp as well, because that should help Thorns, but something isn't working right, or it's working right and it's just a terrible, terrible skill. It's funny because there were so many people who'd come in the Necro chat talking about their Iron Maiden summon build for Season 2 and Season 1 and go, yeah, it's probably the best curse. I mean, after Amp. And, I see a lot of these people, the Skeleton King, he's talking about Decrepit Fee. He pronounces it wrong. And he's wrong. It's just Iron Maiden's the second most useful skill. And you can really notice it. I mean, if they're saying you can notice it and you look and it's like the tiniest tick, like they must be playing some dog shit characters, because this is pathetic. Anyways, I'm done talking about this build. It was a joke. I always knew it was going to be bad. I thought it was going to be better than this. I am surprised still how bad it is. Whatever. It is kind of cute. I actually think if you just want to fool around one day, just make any Necromancer and give him some gear and, max Confuse, max Curse Mastery, max Amp, max Iron Maiden, put the remaining 20 points into Revives. Actually, that's what I would do now, because Iron Golem did nothing. Or Clay Golem, either one. They're both solid minions for tankiness and overall utility. I have low FHR, and so does him. And that was one of the reasons we kept dying. Okay, on to his build. So what he's doing is his design of the Skeletal Mage build. The reason there's a Skeletal Mage build, with quotation marks you can't see, I'm making bunny ears. So do it yourself, please, because it's so awful, is based around the new Grimm's Burning Dead Scythe, which gives you a fair amount of skill points to Skeletal Mage. It should be a bit more, because with BIS gear, and by the way, he is BIS, everything's +1, he's got 4 fire facets with a +1 Grimm's Burning Dead Scythe. He's got the works. He's got the +1 trangs, full skillers. His Skeletal Mages are only 56, or it was 57. I think it was 56, but it's 57 with CTA. And you can get 57 mages with just, a better setup, like a shield and a weapon, Laerix plus your +4 offhand. And I get that, but I'm using a 2-hand, which sucks, and I'm not even getting that much skill points to mages. Anyways, it doesn't matter, because even if it gave, +10 skeletal mages and you got it up to 60, they'd still be complete dog poo-poo. Here's some numbers for you guys. His skeletal warriors were at, I think, 53 or 54, and I did the math on it. They should be doing 2.75k per hit. There's 8 of them. That means they're doing 18k, so to speak. The mages are probably doing 1k each, and there's 14 of them, because you get to summon 6 additional mages. That means he's gimping his skeletal warriors. He's doing everything he possibly can to make skeletal mages shine, and yet his skeletal mages are doing less DPS on paper than his skeletal warriors. Also, skeletal warriors splash, and skeletal mages have the worst spell ever. It's slow. I mean, just look at it. It needs to be like twice as fast. It's not even enough. It needs a bigger hitbox too. There's too many problems with skeletal mages. I told them that they should buff their damage by at least 100%. Even if they do that, this build is still going to be bad, and don't make it. That's it. Okay, so I think I got these 2 builds out of the way. Also, there is one other idea. You know how he's got fire facets? Well, fire facets do buff skeletal mages, but it's only the fire ones. So technically, if they buff their damage by 100%, your skeletal fire mages would do like 3k each. Your other mages would be doing like 2k. But if you actually wasted the time to summon 14 fire mages, had your BIS gear, that would actually not be the worst thing in the world. Your fire mages would do 42k on paper. And I actually think if they buff their damage by 100%, if you played the season and you had a Necromancer and you had runes to spare at the end of the season, I honestly think the most hype thing you could do is make this build with skeletal fire mages and summon 14 of them on screen and see what happens. That's only if they buff their damage by 100%, okay? If they buff it any less than that, it's not cool. It's just lame. So the other little side issues things is, I brought up that Scelemancer got buffs. It wasn't Grimm's Burning Dead Scythe. It's actually a nerf, as we just explained. But Armor King Laerix actually allows you to summon additional skeletal warriors and skeletal mages, 2 each of each one. So that's why you have 20, skeletons these days. So that's the whole thing of having, 20 skeletons at 30 skills, 30 total. If you find a Laerix early on or buy one early on, even though they do the same sheet damage as 5 clay golems with 30 skills, you have 4 times as many minions, which is generally a better thing. There are times where it's not, but for, clearing early content, you actually kind of want your minions to fan out most of the time, because you don't need to, single target enemies. So that is actually really cool. It's a 25% damage buff, 8 to 10, What's 20% of 8? That's, 2. So then 5% of 8 would be 1, right? Or 5% of 8 would be point. What am I talking about? I think I might be retarded. 8 to 10 is a 25% buff. Okay, I can't. I'm sorry, I'm tired. Usually I'm better at math, and I'm like failing right now. Anything else to talk about in this video? Oh, things to come. What am I going to test? I promise I will make a video on every other important necro. Now, last season I made a video about, the playthrough normal nightmare hell guide. I don't think I'm going to do that this time. The reason is there wasn't a lot of changes that affect necros earlier on. Technically, the biggest change would be Poison Nova. It's probably going to remain the best in-game spec. The issue is they're making it harder to build. It's going to be much, much worse until you get BIS gear. Like, as it stands in Season 2, you can get full Trangs and Black Bogs, and you can farm, Blood Moon maps. Next season, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be, you need basically everything perfect before you can really accomplish much. Teeth was reworked to be worse leveling while better later on. That could actually affect the build for mapping, but the main effect is Bone is going to be terrible for leveling because warriors are already the best option for normal and nightmare. And with this nerf to Teeth at lower... The reason they're nerfing Teeth at lower skill levels is because it's broken in LLDs. And so they're trying to fix that. Now, it looks like it might get a buff for, you know, later on. And also they're making the magic skill charms. Oh, I should talk about that. They're making elemental large charms, which, so I will hopefully get to Teeth and see if that's a good mapping spec. I don't think it will be, but maybe it'll do something. The big one, and that's going to be the next video I make, is the Brand or Hailmancer. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And anyone who knows anything will go, ooh, I know what he's talking about. And if you don't know, you'll have to tune in. Okay, guys, Skeleton King out.